All right, today we're diving into something huge. It's called the Morphean Cosmology Framework. And let me tell you, it is seriously ambitious. This isn't just some new theory. It's being presented as a kind of operating system for reality, something that claims to connect the dots between physics, biology, and even our sense of ethics, all in one single model. It's a lot to wrap your head around, so let's break it down piece by piece.
So to even begin this journey, you have to start with a question that kind of flips everything you've probably learned on its head. What if space, the vast emptiness between planets and stars, what if it isn't empty at all? What if it's actually a physical, structured thing, a medium that carries everything we see and experience? That one single idea, that's the key that unlocks this entire framework.
Okay, Section 1, a new operating system. The whole point of the MCF is to shift how we look at science itself. It's about moving past just describing what happens and finally getting to explain why it has to happen that way.
So the framework puts science into two categories. What it calls Stage 1 science is basically our current mainstream approach. And it's amazing, right? It's great at measuring and observing what happens. For example, we know light bends near massive objects. But the MCF wants to be Stage 2 science. It's not satisfied with what. It's digging for the how and the why, the actual mechanics that make it impossible for light to do anything but bend in that situation.
So what is this medium of space then? Well, it has a name, the Fasma Crystalline Substrate. The idea is to completely forget about the vacuum. Instead, you have to imagine space as this incredible, invisible field made of perfectly interlocking, flexible geometric shapes. In this model, everything, light, gravity, matter, it's all just a vibration or a pattern moving through this universal substrate.
And if you accept that first idea, it has this massive domino effect. All of our most fundamental concepts have to be redefined. Space-time? It's not a vacuum anymore, it's the Fasma substrate. Gravity? Forget about some mysterious force. The model says it's just physical pressure and deformation in the substrate. And light, that whole confusing wave-particle thing? Here, it's just a simple ripple, a harmonic wave expanding through the medium.
Section 2, the universal nested pattern. Now, this is where it starts to get really mind-bending. The framework claims that once you see the substrate, you start seeing the same exact three-part structure absolutely everywhere, at every scale of reality.
This quote from the framework's creator, Christos Soterelis, is the perfect way to get it. Think about a single color on a screen. From far away, it just looks green. But if you zoom all the way in, you see it's actually made of tiny red, green, and blue lights all working together. The MCF argues that, well, everything in the universe is like that.
This idea is called the nested totality principle. And what it really means is that any object you can think of, an atom, a cell, even a star, is never just one thing. It is always, at the same time, a complete system with three parts in a constant dance, something pulling it inward, a compression pole, something pushing it outward, an expansion pole, and a middle layer that exists right in that perfect balance.
So let's put this to the test. Let's see if we can actually find this pattern. We'll start at one of the smallest scales, the nucleus of an atom. From the outside, it just looks like a tiny, dense ball of compression. But if we use this framework as a lens and zoom in, we see the three parts. The strong nuclear force is the compressor, a powerful glue holding it all together. At the exact same time, you have the electromagnetic force pushing all the protons apart. That's your expander. And the stable nucleus that we actually observe, that's the middle, the equilibrium created by that constant perfect tension. Okay, one example is interesting, but the claim is that this pattern is universal. So let's make a huge jump up in scale. We're going from the atomic all the way to the biological, and we're going to look inside the mitochondria in our cells.
And would you believe it? The framework says the pattern is right there. The mitochondrial matrix has a strong negative charge, that's the compression pole. The outside of the membrane has a positive charge, that's the expansion pole. And the middle, the crucial part, that's the inner membrane, where the motor of life, ATP synthase, literally spins in the voltage difference between the two poles to create energy. You need all three all at once.
All right, let's push this to the absolute limit. Can we really find this same three-part system in something as enormous as the sun? I mean, from here, the sun just looks like one giant explosion, right? Pure expansion, just radiating energy out.
But according to this principle, if you look inside, the architecture is there. The core, with its crushing gravity creating fusion, is the ultimate compressor, The corona, which blasts the solar wind out into space, is obviously the expander. And right there in between, you have the middle layers, like the tachocline, where that incredible tension between compression and expansion gives birth to the sun's entire magnetic field.
Section 3. The math of stability. So, okay, if this three-part pattern is literally everywhere, what's the glue? What's the rule that holds it all together? The framework says the answer is actually a very famous number, the golden ratio.
What you're looking at is called the harmonic collapse threshold table, and the claim here is profound. It says that for any of these systems to stay stable, the feedback ratio inside it must stay at or above the golden ratio, about 1.618. If it ever drops below that number, the system hits what's called a breach point and it falls apart. Suddenly, the golden ratio isn't just about pretty spirals in a seashell, it's a fundamental constant for stability.
And the scale of this claim is just staggering. The MCF says this isn't some coincidence. It's a hard-coded rule of the universe that shows up across at least 12 orders of magnitude. We're talking from the geometry of chemical bonds all the way up to the orbital ratios of the planets in our solar system. Section 4. Testable claims, grand ambitions. So, this all sounds pretty incredible, right? Maybe even a little out there. So where does a framework this big actually stand? Let's look at what it claims it can do, and the line between its internal logic and real-world proof. The ambitions are, well, world-changing. The documents claim that if these principles are correct, they provide real, actionable blueprints for solving some of our biggest challenges: climate stabilization, creating truly ethical AI, a totally new field called geometric medicine, and even a mathematical pathway to what it describes as biological immortality.
Now, how can it possibly make claims like that? Well, the sources say the framework's internal logic was tested by multiple independent AI systems across more than 30 different fields, and the result that came back was 0 paradoxes detected and 0 internal contradictions. The argument is that, from a purely logical standpoint, it's perfectly consistent.
But, and this is probably the most important point, the framework is very honest about its own status. This quote says everything. Being logically consistent is not the same thing as being scientifically proven. The documents are explicit. Physical, real-world laboratory validation is the absolute necessary next step. Okay, Section 5, the creator and the license. To wrap up, it's absolutely essential to know who created this and the specific rules for how this information is being shared. So the architect behind this entire sprawling framework is a man named Christos Soterelis, who also goes by the name Morpheus the Shapemaster. And finally, this knowledge is shared under a very specific custom license. The key rules are pretty straightforward. You have to give credit to the creator, you can't use it to make money, and you can't change or alter the original work. But that last one, ethics preservation, is really unique. It says any use of the framework must not contradict its own core principles. It's a fascinating way to share knowledge, inviting everyone to look, but within a very clear ethical and structural boundary.